All right, ladies. So for today's class, we're going to continue to look at the American Revolution between 1776 and 1783. And we're going to discuss the causes of the American Revolution. However, for today's class, we're going to discuss just one of the causes, right? And for that, I just want to do a recap to see if you're reading. What is the other name for the American Revolution? Another name for the American Revolution.
American War of Independence.
The American War for Independence, yes. So you're correct. So another name for the American Revolution is the American War for Independence. Now, so if you're reading and you see American Revolution, or if you go online and you see the American War for Independence, it's talking about the same event. All right. Next. How many stars and stripes were on the United States original flag?
13
13 what?
stars on the flag.
13 stars and 13 stripes. And if we look on the flag today, you have 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there are 13 stripes. And the original flag had 13 stars. What the 13 stripes and the 13 stars symbolize?
The 13 original colonies.
So these were the original colonies that decided that they are going to form a union. They are going to become one country. The 13 colonies decided that they are going to become one country. Today in the US flag, you have about 50 to 51 stars, which symbolize the different states, and they still have 13 stripes across, right? On the flag. Very good. Now we're going to go on a road to independence, and I know Mrs. Brown Chambers would have gone through some of these with you. And one of them is that all of these that you're looking at here on the timeline, these are causes for the American Revolution. So you had the French and the Indian War. Then after that, you had the Proclamation of 1763, the Sugar Duties Act of 1764, the Stamp Duties Act of 1765, the Declaratory Act of 1766, the Thousand Act of 1767. Then you had the Boston Massacre in 1770, the Tea Party Act of 1773, and you also had the Intolerable Act of 1774 and the Lexington and Concord of 1775. Now, the war is going to take place after 1775. But everything that happened before 1776 is what is considered to be the causes, what led to the American Revolution, why the 13 colonies are going to rebel against their mother country. Who was their mother country?
England.
England or Britain, because by 1707, the name England would have been a united colony, so they are going to fight against Britain, right? Great Britain. And so if we look at this, is that Britain, as a result of the French and the Indian War, they are going to implement a lot of different policies that is going to cause the individual colonies to be upset, and the colonies are going to get upset, and because they are upset, they are going to say, listen, we need to get to be independent from them. We don't need to be controlled, because everything that they are doing is not in our best interest. They're going to put on the Sugar Duties Act, the Stamp Duties Act, the Thousand Act, the Tea Act, the Intolerable Act, all of these acts. They are going to say that, listen, the colonies, all the 13 colonies, they are saying that, listen, we do not agree with all of these because it is not right. And if we notice that when we looked at the original 13 colonies, we realized that all those colonies had different cultures, though similar but yet different. They had their own legislature. So each of the legislature going to say, all right, we going to remain, each of us going to still have our legislature, individual legislature, but we are going to form a union. And the United Kingdom, Britain, did not like the fact that the colonists are going to declare themselves independence. So what they're going to do is that they are going to go ahead and they are going to fight to take back the 13 colonies. Now, for today's class, what we're going to do, because we're just going to refresh our mind when it comes to the French and the Indian War. All right, so that is what we're going to do, the French and the Indian War. And when next week, Tuesday and Friday, you have a test on the Industrial Revolution. And then when we return the following week, we are going to finish the different acts, right? So we have activities. So for my class, I'm giving you activities to do within the session and we discuss the answers. For now, now is 1:22. I'm going to give you 15 to 20 minutes. So if you look in your document, look in the chat, you're going to take that document from the chat and you're going to read it in your groups and you're going to answer. So I'm going to divide you into 5 groups. 5 groups. Breakout room, and you're going to be in 5 groups. All the members in the group, you are supposed to read the document together and answer the questions, the 5 questions. After that, we are going to join again, where we are going to discuss the answers to those questions. So you need a representative from your group, appoint a representative from your group to speak on your group's behalf. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms now, and I'm going to eavesdrop, going to the different groups.
Sir,
And
can you send back the document because my Wi-Fi chipped out and now the chat is cleared.
all right. All right, ladies, so I'm going to place you in the different groups now.
You're crazy. You don't know. You don't know.
One second, ladies. I'm trying to get the breakout room, but I'm not seeing the
So are you going to put us into breakout?
yes, I'm trying to put you in breakout room, but I'm not seeing the icon for it. I don't know where the
Okay.
icon disappeared to. Ladies, it seems as if somebody's praying for this because I had the breakout room before and I'm just not seeing the icon. It seems as if Grindley, it seems as if you work some of your man. So we can't find the breakout. I can't find the icon. I don't know what happened. All right, so I always have a plan B. So we are going to go through it and then I'm going to ask individual. We are going to go through, we're going to go through. So I'm going to ask someone to read this slide for me, please. Yes, Bruce, I look and I'm not seeing it. I'm not sure.
In 1753, the French that were located in Canada began building forts and Ohio River Valley by both Britain and France. The colonists who were still considered British colonists viewed this movement.
You're still reading?
Breaking up.
Yes, you're breaking up.
By the French has an attack.
What you say?
Go ahead for me, please. Mackenzie, you want to read?
Sir, you say you can hear me now, sir?
Yes, I am.
Okay. In 1753, the French that were located in Canada began building forts on the lands of the Ohio River Valley that were claimed by both Britain and France. The colonists, who were still considered British colonists, viewed this movement by the French as an attack.
So one of the first thing we need to know is that along the Ohio River, the French, they started to build a fort, several different forts they started. They started to claim a portion of the Ohio River, but the British, they were very, very upset by this because they believed that all of that area belonged to them. All right, somebody else, I'm going to ask you to read this for me, please. Go ahead, Parkinson.
The fighting began in 1754. Both France and the British colonists had the help of Native American allies or friends in war. However, the British colonists could not fight off the French troops and their Native American allies with only the help of their own Native American allies. The British army was sent from England to the colonies to help them fight the French. This war was called the French and Indian War. With the help of their Native American allies and the British army, the colonists defeated the French in 1763.
All right, so we know that a war started, thank you very much, Parkinson, between France and Britain, and they seek the help of the Native Americans. Now, I want to ask you this question. If you were a Native American, would you have joined this war? If you're a Native American, would you have joined this war between both the French and the British?
No, sir.
No, sir, it
Why?
doesn't
It's
include
none of
me,
my
sir.
business.
Minding
It's
your
Why
her
you think it
country.
is none of your business?
because it's between them.
It is
It's your
between them, but
country.
who?
They
But
stole
who?
it.
Sir, I would most definitely fight. Because first of all, they're on
You
my
were
land.
on
I would
the
be
land?
first.
Both of them are on your land.
Yes. Both of them, they were on the Native American lands. And so,
Why should you pick a side if both of them came onto your land and stole it?
It's best you help.
But I feel like I
No
would
one
have
is
picked
better
the
than the
side
other.
who weren't
but
trying to kill
put your
us.
mind all right, pretend as if you were a Native American then. Why do you believe they would have joined?
Because they disagreed with both sides.
You Yes, I know they would have disagreed with both.
Sir, I'm not fighting, sir, because I love sir.
Sir, maybe they promised them something.
It seems like that was
Sir, but a
something,
promise
yes.
is a convert to a fool, sir. Isn't
Oh
it?
wait, I misread.
Yeah.
All right. So we know it, as it say here, with the help of the Native American allies and the British Army, the colonists defeated the French. So at first, if you realize that the Native Americans, they were playing like both in our term, you're being
Yes,
on
sir.
both sides. Because at first they were with the French, and then after they changed to the British. And so with the help of the Indians, the native Indians, they were able to defeat the French in 1763. What are some of the effects of war?
People
Financial
Sir,
effects
die.
of
Oh,
war.
pollution, sir.
a lot of money
Damage.
goes into funding the war, and then
Sir,
when it's over, you're left with a lot of
sir,
money
you
gone.
can hear me?
All right, 1 second. Go ahead, Panton. Go ahead, Panton.
Oh, sir, a lot of money goes into funding the war. So when the war is over, the country is left with less money.
Yes, and how some examples of funding. How
Paying
war
for
is
the
expensive because
guns,
they have to
paying for
purchase what?
equipment, guns,
Equipment.
Weapons.
protection.
Mm-hmm. You also have to transport troops from abroad.
Yes, sir.
So you have to transport troops. Both France had to transport troops to Canada, and also the British had to transport troops. So that is a very expensive venture for both. All right. You have to provide food for your army personnel. You have to provide food for them. That is going to be very expensive. And so we know for sure that war is very, very expensive. All right, somebody please read this for me, please.
When the war ended, the British and North America
You're breaking up,
tweaking
Mackenzie.
the sir. Sir,
Sir, can I read?
Go ahead, Anderson.
When the war ended, the British gained French lands in North America between the Appalachian and
Lakian Mountains.
the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River. Colonists were eager to settle on these lands on these new western lands.
So what we are seeing now with the United, well, it wasn't the United States. What we're seeing now happening that the British colonies, because of the lands that they gained from the war, they are now expanding their territorial borders, right? All right. So someone else, one person, Anderson, you can read the first point, and then someone else read the second point. So
Okay.
Anderson and then Parkinson.
With the end of the war, with the end of the war came the question of who was to pay for the cost of the war and for the British soldiers that were needed to protect the newly won land. British citizens were already being heavily taxed in England. They didn't think it was fair that they should pay for it.
All right.
Cost. The cost of a war that happened in North America and didn't involve them. The King of England, King George III, and Parliament, British government, decided that British colonists living in North America should help pay for part of the cost of the French and Indian War and for the soldiers that were being kept there to protect the new lands.
So you see, thank you very much, ladies. Do you see that war comes with consequence, financial consequence? because people in Britain said, listen, we never send anybody over to that side of the world to colonize the land. We didn't send them over there that they end up in war with France and they end up with war with Indians. And we, the British taxpayers, have to be paying tax to fund the war, to pay for the war that would have happened. And then all the soldiers that are there, those soldiers that are in North America, they are not protecting us. So the colonists, those in the 13 colonies, they should be the ones paying for the war, not us. The soldiers who are there protecting them, because we don't know when the French are going to strike. The French can strike at any time. All right? And because the French can strike at any time, they need to pay for it, because the British soldiers who are there they are protecting the British colonies and not Britain. And another thing that they mentioned was that they said, listen, those in the colonies behave as if they are not British citizens. They behave as if they are separate, because they have been they are separated by us by the sea. They are on one side of the world and we're on the other side. They don't even speak properly. They are dunces. Yes, the British citizens actually thought that people in the colonies, they were dunces and they weren't bright and they were uncivilized. Could you imagine British people calling British people uncivilized? And so we know for sure, ladies, and I'm going to go back here, because this war was expensive, the British government is now going to say that you, the colonists, have to pay for the war that happened, right? And the colonists is going to say, no, we are not paying for it. And so they are going to implement different acts. An act is a law that will force the colonists to pay for the war. And the colonists are going to say, listen, we are not in agreement with all of these different acts. All right? So
Sir,
go ahead.
sir, I don't think they're wrong for taxing them all of that, sir. Because first of all, them going on like them don't want to be associated with Britain or England or whatever. They run away, and then they're gonna begin them now back for money to pay for the war and saying that they're not going to pay, and they never tell them to go over there and war with the people in. So I
Who
think it is.
shouldn't pay?
What
Donkey,
is it?
who shouldn't pay?
Sir, sorry, sir. I was
Yes.
saying that England and Britain, they were
They
right.
were correct to say that the colony should pay.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else agree with that point?
Sir, they were running away from the money that they didn't want to pay and they come to our next country and still have to pay it. So I think they do have to pay.
All right, good.
I
I
agree.
agree to some extent. I agree, ladies, to some extent. Let us see what these other points. I need two person to read these 2 points, and then two other person read the other two. Bruce and Mother Sil. So Bruce, you go first.
Although they agreed to the plan, the colonists were angry. King George III was not yet finished with the British colonies though. He ordered the colonists to stop settling the western land that was won from the French. In addition, colonists who had already settled in the western lands were ordered to leave immediately.
This
Mm-hmm.
was called the Proclamation of 1763. This proclamation reserved the western lands for the Native Americans as part of their unclaimed grounds. It was the hope of King George III this proclamation would prevent more wars between the colonists and the Native Americans.
All right, now we're getting somewhere. We are getting somewhere now. What was the promise that was made to the Native Americans for them to switch side from the French to join the British?
Western land.
Sir, they get
The,
land.
they would receive, they would have
They will
received
get the Western land.
the Western
Western land.
land. But who wanted the Western land to expand?
Okay.
The British.
British land.
The king.
Or the French.
Who wanted the French wanted it, but remember the French would have lost the war because it was the French who originally, well, they were the ones who occupied it for a period of time. The British fought a war and took over the Western land, but somebody else wanted it.
Sir, the British.
Yes, the British wanted it, but remember right here, ladies, look at it. Read over, Bruce, read point 1 and 2 again.
Although they agreed to the plan, the colonists were angry. King George III was not yet finished with the British colonies. He ordered
Stop,
the colonists.
stop, 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 stop.
Sir, is the colonists wanted to land?
The colonists wanted the land.
Say that is what I've been saying.
Sorry, Mother Sil, I didn't hear you. The colonists, they wanted the land. And so the French was first of all, let us look at it. The first set of people to live on the land was the Indians, right?
Yes,
The
sir.
French
Yes,
came
sir.
and occupied the land. The French came, they occupied. The British wanted the land, the Western land, right? And so they went to war for the land. After a period of time, let us, before I go to that, so we know for sure that the colonists, they wanted the land. They wanted the land. But a proclamation was made. So Mother Sil, read the point 2, 3, and 4.
This order was called the Proclamation of 1763. This proclamation reserved the Western lands for the Native Americans as part of their hunting grounds. It was the hope of King George III that this proclamation would prevent more wars between the colonists and the Native Americans.
Thank you very much. So what we're seeing now at the proclamation, what the king is basically saying right here. One, the colonists, they don't want to pay for the war, right? They started to curse and said, why we are going to pay for the war? The people who live in England, the British people, they also said that we are not going to pay for the war because it's the colonists should pay for the war, right? So both British people in the mother country and British people in the colonies, right? In the colonies, both were divided. The British people in Britain said that, listen, we are not paying for it. British people in the colonies said that, listen, we are not paying for it. And then the king now come and make a proclamation and said, listen, the colonies, you don't want to pay for the war, but yes, they want to go and settle on the Western land. Come off the land. So he ordered them to leave immediately. And you see this land
Sir,
that
but the land never belonged to him.
well, it never belonged to him, but he took control over it. And so the proclamation, you're correct, the proclamation that he made, he gave the land back to the Native Americans because he said, if we should give the land back to the Native Americans, then guess what? We're not going to have any problem with the Native Americans. We're not going to have any fight with them. You understand now the story behind the French Indian war, ladies?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. All right. So next one. Somebody please read this one for me.
Continued to get worse for the colonists. The king also have his Britain colonial governors even greater control over them. Each day, the colonists were reminded that they must obey laws being made in England. Needless to say, most colonists were furious over these changes.
Very good. Now I want to ask you this question. Why do you believe that the colonists were upset that every single day the governors, can remember each colony, each of the 13 colony had their own governor. Why were they upset that the governors are going to remind them every day that, listen, you need to follow the laws of England? Why you believe that they were upset?
Sir,
What was
because
the
them
system
never,
of governance before that?
sir,
Go
them
ahead.
never want have anything to do with Britain. That's why they left. So being constantly reminded of it gonna get them upset, right?
Yes, yes, that is true. Anyone else? Anyone else, ladies?
So because they're not in Britain anymore, so they feel like they shouldn't follow Britain rules anymore.
Very good. And also, I want to ask the same question, just to go a little deeper, how they governed themselves before.
Oh, sir, they felt that they were their own leaders.
Yes, because remember that each of the colonies had their own legislature that made their own
Rules,
rules. Very good. So if they
laws.
make our laws, so if they make their own rules or laws, I know Brittany is telling them that, listen, you obey us and not your own legislature. That is taking away power from who?
The
The
sir, the
colonies.
The
Britain,
colonies,
Colonists. So it's
the
taking away
colonies.
power from them. So they feel that, listen, we would have escaped your former government and come and colonize North America. I know you want to control us. So they were very upset. They were upset, one, because Britain wanted them to pay for the war. Two, the land, the Western land that they wanted, Britain said that, listen, you need to come off that land. So they were very upset with the king for those two reasons. And the third one is that the king is now telling them that, listen, you obey us. You feel that because you live way across the sea, you have control over your own self. I am in control of all of these 13 colonies. You're all British colonies. I am the king. You listen to me. You obey my rules. And if my rules is in conflict with your rules, you need to abolish your rules and adopt my rules. A big stick policy. And so, yes, it's like a big stick. You have a big stick over the colonies' head or back. And so they are going to get very furious and they're going to get upset. All right, ladies. And
Yes, sir.
so that is now, after that, the war, now he's going to exercise his control. So we have the proclamation here, 1763. Then you are going to know to have control. Britain is now going to exercise more control for the very first time, and they are going to implement. And so what they're going to do is that they're going to implement different rules or laws to
Sir, they
force the
go completely
colonists.
decide the king.
Yes, they are going to defy the king. And that's one of the reasons why after now, ladies, you see, after when the king start to, or the British government start to implement these rules, these taxes on them, they are going to say, listen, we need to stop it. We need to join together and unify ourselves. That's why they call themselves the United States. We need to unite ourselves because you see, if each of us fight on our own, we are not going to be successful. So we have to unite. And that is when they are going to declare themselves independent from Britain in 1776. And after they declare themselves independent, ladies, a big war going to take place.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Sir, when I said earlier when I said that oh, I think that they deserved it, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. That they should tax it. I know that they're upset about having the big stick over their heads by the British.
Yeah.
I understand that. They can be upset about that. The only problem that I had, or the only thing that I saw wrong in what they were doing, sir, is that they didn't want anything to do with Britain. They
Yeah.
Sir, they don't want anything to do to do with Britain. Yet still they're going back to Britain to ask them for money to pay for the war that they fought.
Which is very unfair. I agree
Yes,
to
sir.
some extent because, and I agree with you because at one point you don't want to pay for the war, but you want to benefit from the Western lands. And that's one of the reasons why they were upset because Britain told them they need to come off the land. Right now, get off the land. And so they were
Yeah, and
very
that
upset
would be
with
a big
that.
waste of time because them go all the way across the sea, they take up a land we never belong to them, and then the ruler I gonna tell them to come off. What if I waste of time that
It's a lot of
and
waste.
resources?
But remember, it's not all of the land there. Remember, the Western land is different from where they originally settled in. Let us show
Yes, sir,
you.
I'm talking about the colonies,
Yes.
that land.
All right. So 1 second. 1 second. Give me a second here. Where it is. One second. All right. So ladies, all of this area here would have been the eastern lands, right? And the western lands would have been along here. So they wanted to take over this side. And Brittany's saying that, listen, remain on this side. Don't go over this side. Leave all of this area, the western land, for, this is a better image of it. Because the river is along here, the Ohio River, right? So Brittany's saying that, listen, all of this area that you originally settled, stay here. Leave all of this area for the Indians that we would have captured or we would have fought against the French and would have taken over. All right? So always remember that Britain wasn't saying that all of them should leave their original land. All Britain is saying that we would have fought against the French for this piece here. So you see this piece of land, which is right here, leave it for the Indians. But the colonists said, no, we want to expand. And they have always been like that because if we look at this was their original colonies today, the original colonists, and they would have expanded after their independence to take over all of these lands. So You remember, anybody know the song by Chronix? You know the
Which
song
one,
by
sir?
Chronix? That Chronix sing about capture land?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So when Chronix said Jamaica is capture land, US are capture land, that's what he's meaning. All of this area that America live on today, which is now America that Trump is running people away from, all of this area was captured. All right,
Yes,
ladies?
sir.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's it for today.
Sir,
Trust
for
you had
you,
a, huh?
sir, all class 190.
2 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock now.
Sir, normally class with a long.
We usually go longer than
Class
12.
class felt kind of short.
Yes, no, sir.
Yeah.
Maybe because it started a little late.
Yeah. Sorry about that, ladies, but not next week, the following week, we'll have a longer class. Just come to class early. Because I have some other questions for you, but when I put the PowerPoint in the Google Classroom, please answer the questions.
Sir, I already.
And Gabriel said class never feels short at all. Gabriel want her
And I
night.
agree with Gabai.
Yeah, it's like kind of short, but like just right.
Gabriel ready for the weekend. Ladies, enjoy the weekend.
Thank
Sir,
you, sir.
you too.
Same to you.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Me gonna my bed. Bye, sir.
All
Bye,
right.
sir.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
sir.
Bye,
sir.
sir.
All right.
Bye, sir. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you very much.